excuse me?
Grounded.
Grounded. I love that. Feminine energy. Crying. Thank you so much for crying. I was told so many times that I was never allowed to cry at work, and it wasn't a volitional thing with me. I would just cry. I would feel things and I would cry. My nickname is Crybaby, so you got my heart with that one. Yeah. No, it's true. The expression of emotions. I love it. Okay, we'll go to our feminine energy slide and just show you what we wrote down. Inward, balanced, union, care of the planet, nurturing, justice, flexible, intuition, transformative, reflective, patient and tolerant. Not always, sorry. I'm just speaking personally. And heart-based. And the example of habits are nurture to the point of forming dependencies or tolerate abuse. I can relate to that. Often understand everyone's perspective, yes, and are unable to take direct action. Caretake others and not self. Then when you start to read some of those example of habits, you can see how balance is so very necessary. You know, at one point I was thinking like, feminine energy coming in to take over the planet. Okay, that's not really how it works. You know, that's kind of a masculine response to feminine energy. But it's more, it is about that beautiful balance of give and take and breath in and breath out. It's that we're moving toward and looking toward. And just quickly, when we're talking about care of the planet and the masculine, feminine, I looked at the front page of the paper yesterday, and I have to say, the shifting masculine and feminine is so present. The top story is the harassing texts, groping, cost a man his job at the University of Minnesota. The women stood up and said, this is not right, and called that into question and are looking for balance in that. The one to the right is toys lose gender labels at Target. For the longest time they were saying, these are boys' toys, these are girls' toys. And they're saying, no, they're everybody's toys. Kids have a choice. Zimbabwe waiting for police papers in the Lion case. And the Lion case is a real strong example of the masculine and then the feminine rising up to ask for more balance in that situation. It just goes on and on. You can see it. You can see it everywhere. It is happening. So it's our responsibility to flow with it the best that we can and create more of this balance, in my mind.
I think also to understand it, because it can be difficult to understand the feminine energy, or sometimes even to understand the masculine energy and how they stay in balance. So they come into us in different ways. And I think we have a visual.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me okay with this? I want to be like Joan. This seems like a Tom Jones thing. You know, I've always had a resistance towards gender labels. You know, back when it was like women's lib, that just drove me crazy, you know, because there was a thing that was always kind of, the feeling was like there was something bad about one or the other. And as I came into understanding energy, then I started to see that it's really energy that's coming in, and it isn't personal. It isn't about us on the human level. It's about what's needed on the planet. And so for so many years, it was so important to have more of the energy that was pushing and creating and you know, driving things. But then that gets to a point where it can move into abuse. And so then now we're in a place where the feminine energy is coming in, and it's a divine energy. You know, they all are divine energies. And they come in, and then we start seeing things that happen in the collective, you know, and you also start feeling things personally. And so I'm always very interested in watching what's happening in the collective. Like as Joan said, you know, with the newspaper articles, we're seeing so many things that are coming to a higher place of equality, you know, which is really a part of the energies coming in. You see in the news, even just the minimum wage going up. That's so more people have more, right? And then we see, how many of you saw last week Netflix offering up to a year maternity, or as much maternity leave as needed for both the father and the mother, or whatever the relationship is, so that whether it was for adoption or birth. And you just see that and you say, well, isn't this interesting? And then you saw other companies hopping on board and finding that they needed to do that too. And so there's this overall energy that we're starting to see, and a lot of times it kicks up what's going on in the collective. But if you look at its underlining things, it's always bringing in, during this time right now, unity, fairness, justice, nurturing for all people. It's bringing in stuff that makes for the divide or the gap to not be quite so large. So it's very interesting. Joan mentioned Cecil, the lion, and you see that, and that's huge because we're now saying that it's not just even people, it's animals, the planet.
That's the question about politics. Whether you probably shape a lot of things that will happen with feminism and masculine energy. What energy do you think that Hillary Clinton is showing her campaign for president?
My preference would be for you to sense what you think, because I think if we got into politics here.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, my preference is with politics is for, as you start to become more aware of the energies, you start to sense out where you feel most aligned, rather than to kind of, because for every politician that's kind of up in the forefront right now, and we talked about this when we were talking about preparation for this talk, is you can see how much the media decides what's going to be on. And so, right? Joan would say that, when they talked about the news, there would be huge discussion of everything going on and then deciding which thing they're going to put their attention on. And so, I think we have to be careful when you're thinking about voting is really using your sensory system now. Your sensory system, much more than just the facts that are being presented. And that's a part of the shift in energy, is we're not going to just look at information, because that's real left brain. And we want to be whole brain, just like we want to be balance of masculine and feminine. We also want to be balance of whole brain. So there's the left brain details, and then there's the right brain that's going to be picking up and sensing and translating into an understanding for you. So I think when we're looking at this, we're seeing all these different things that are evidence of it coming in, and to feel that we can be, at the risk of saying courageous and brave, because that's beautiful energy that would be assigned to masculine, but to be brave and courageous in your ability to quiet down about it, to decide sometimes to just pause, to just wait until you sense something versus head-to-head informational. So we're moving into these things that we're doing things so differently right now, or the opportunity to do it differently is right now. When you look at some of the other evidence of what's going on, is you look at GoFundMe or crowdsourcing. You're seeing that people are gathering together for things. Then sense out whether that feels like, when I get the stuff on, lots of emails about different requests, I stop and I kind of sense whether that feels like something that's in alignment with where I am. If somebody says something to me about a seminar coming up, it probably looks great, and when I read the thing, it looks great, and then I ask and I go in, and I sense out whether that feels like it's for me or not. So sometimes some of the greatest people are coming around or I have opportunities for, and my head will be willing me on one level, and then my intuition or my energy alignment will be saying something different. So that's the interesting play that we have right now going on. You know? So watching the shifts allow you permission to shift. And watching what's happening in the collective to be doing things differently allows us to kind of say like, whoa, you know, what am I noticing? Am I seeing the shifts, or am I reacting to the reverberations that are going on about it? You know, could we just get behind where it's moving instead of putting our attention on the reaction?
So you're talking too about creating your own filters. And if you think of historically, we went through the industrial age, very masculine energy, technology. We had years of fast technology coming into the market, and now data is available to us. The next piece is communication, and communication is a feminine energy. So it's all important, but now we're needing to step into creating our own, as Cindi says, our own filtering, our own practices like pause, and what do we want to absorb or assimilate in this energy, not what is given to us.
That's one of the beautiful things about the internet. It's become so democratic that you can seek out you can find ways to support yourself, you know, whatever direction that you want to think. But you can find the balance out there if you look for it. And I love the idea of looking beyond what is presented to you, because we reference television news, and I worked in TV news for 20 years, and they are making conscious left brain decisions about what is acceptable, what will be acceptable to advertisers, what is a clear story that we can tell, what character trait can we hang our news on. I don't think it may not be as conscious as that, but that really is part of the decision-making process that goes into news. It's easier to tell a story if we all decide who Hillary Clinton is, who Donald Trump is, who, you know, Dr. Palmer is. We'll make that decision and then just keep putting information into the box that we've created. So I would really encourage you to watch the news with your heart and your sense of consciousness about your life and people. I always say, you know, don't watch television news passively. It really won't serve you at all. You'll be left with a ton of energy that isn't optimistic at all, unless they maybe close out with a Skippy the water skiing squirrel story. You know, then take that one to heart and go to bed with it. But you know, but watch consciously, and if you watch the news, offer what you are capable of offering at that point, and that would be feminine energy. Offer that kind thought to the person who they tell you is in trouble. Offer a sense of balance to, you know, harsh political dialogue. Think kind thoughts. I mean, it sounds like, oh, what good is that going to do? But we all have come to understand that we are powerful creators. And so use that power to watch the news if you must.
A great example of that is when the different people were shot in the church in the South. And it was so beautiful because, and I know I've spoken about this before, but it's that the families decided that they weren't going to talk about the event, their last event of their life. They were going to talk about the love that they brought to the planet. You know? So you see that we can make some really clear choices, and it's not to, you know, be ignorant to what's going on, but to decide how we're going to move with what's going on. So as I watch the news, I watch it and I see something, and then I think I'm going to send light and energy to the places that have suffering. I'm going to send light and energy to the places that people are, you know, having the discord. You know, that's how I'm going to use what I'm being presented. And, you know, I think that that's the beauty of when you start to see that we get to decide where we lend our energy. And that's a big, powerful thing, you know, is to just decide where I place my energy and my attention. You know, attention is the intellectual part. The energy is the part where you decide how much you're willing to put that energy out. Because it is. It's like a drain on, it's like having car doors open on cars. When you go into the house at night and you leave your car in the garage, if you have doors open, you know, it's a drain to your energy. So it's being deciding, you know, it's like, you know, do I want to lend my energy in that way? Yeah, not so much. How can I lend my energy? That's the question.
So let's flip to the slide. I don't know how much time we want to spend on this next one, aligning. We've talked quite a bit about the old energy and the new energy. And I mentioned earlier we've been talking more in cycles, and we're in that cycle. There's more light coming in. So as we look at these lists, as we go forward, it may be easier to align more to the energy on the right. If you think about trying to swim upstream or canoe upstream, it's a little bit harder to do. And the feminine energy is that downflow of energy. And so if you align yourself to those attributes, it's a little bit easier. And honestly, sometimes it's not easy to align to these. If you're in a corporate job or you need to be firm, it's not always easy, and we want to acknowledge that. Okay? So then why is this important now, unless either of you have any comments on that one?
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, personally, it's honoring yourself is a huge piece. Just really honoring where you are or what feels good to you. I recently met with somebody who wanted me to change the times that I accept phone calls. Because when I accept phone calls with my practice, it's between 10 and 6. And she was like, well, you know, people really start their job at 8. And I said, yeah, I'm doing my own energy alignment at that time. Well, you probably ought to just at least have them calling. You don't want to miss the calls. And see that fear-based? And I said, yeah, no, I think I'm okay with 10. And then it was, well, you know, people like to take care of their phone calls first thing in the morning. And I said, yeah, I understand that. You know, but it just kept coming, and I was like, wow, this is so fascinating how it's just a new way of, a new idea for this person that I would actually decide how I want to do things. Isn't that wild? So those are the simple little things that are different about when you are really honoring your system and going with what feels right to you. I work a lot of nights where I'm working later, so I don't need to have my day start really early and be stretched out, because that would be old energy. That would be running yourself ragged rather than, you know, making sure that you're in good alignment.
God bless the millennials.
Oh, yeah.
The millennials are causing trouble for the energy that has been in corporations, because there's such frustration. It's like, you're not following our rules. Why aren't you following? Why are you expecting that you're going to have a life? You know? Why are you expecting balance in your life? They just know that that's how they want to live. So God bless the millennials for coming in and just breaking up some of that power structure. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. So what are some reasons, why do you think this is important that we talk about this now? Because it's crazy. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's new. It's new and different. There's misunderstandings, absolutely.
There's resistance too. I was curious about that when she mentioned the woman who just couldn't accept that she would do her own things. Is that just that it's old, or that's the masculine? Because I run into that too. Like, I'm just not going to do it that way. People get so angry at me because I'm choosing. Like, I don't have the right to choose how I want to move forward. It's not right.
It's almost like a religious dogma.
Yeah.
We have decided that this is the right way and that's the wrong way. And the duality it's so polarizing as opposed to duality that's shifting lovingly back and forth, you know? The dogma, if we understand that this is how our life works, why would you do it any differently? But
And I've always done it this way. That resistance. I've always done it this way. Why would I want to change?
Well,
so talk about it in order to kind of figure out how to deal with that. Like you just flow with it, but I don't know how to deal with something that's telling me I can't, you know.
yeah, well, you know what's really helpful is understanding the innocence of that person's functioning. Their psychological functioning is that all of their imprinting is that. So then if something bumps up against it, then let's get rid of the thing that's bumping me. You know, so it's the innocence. So when I'm listening to people and they have resistance, I don't have to get riled up. I don't have to pump up. I don't have to do any of that. Like posturing to make my point as I see the innocence of it and as I just fall into my own alignment with it and then just help educate somebody by just keep dropping the next thing in. You know, it's because you're building for them a new way of thinking. You know, there's a woman that is a friend of mine, and she has a friend with a potbelly pig, and she's walking the pig, and this woman comes up to her and says, "Wow, that's an interesting dog. What kind of dog is that?" And she goes, "Well, it's not a dog, it's a pig." And the woman says, "No, really, what kind of dog is it?" And she goes, "Well, no, really, it's a pig." And she said, "Well, so it's a pig dog?" So you see the innocence of you know, square peg, round hole. So that really helps me, you know, is to see the innocence in people as they're doing the very best they can given what their brain is offering them and what the programming has been.
Well, I like what you're saying because I think it's important to have a conversation to bring consciousness. You know, there's a lot of unconscious bias going on too.
Yes.
And you can't shift it or transition it unless it becomes conscious. And it is, and that's conversation.
Yeah,
And
that's
where we
right.
start. That's how we transform and use those transitions. And I love the fact that it's not either or. It's both and masculine and feminine. There's not one better, worse, you know, to judge, at least the judgment. And then to, you know, that masculine energy to really want to change people. You know, if that's what they can laugh at and judge them, but you know what, there's an innocence in it. You know, they're on their back.
And I think you're right. It's really important to have the conversation and to have the consciousness surrounding this, because I'm certain that a lot of you have had these feelings as you walk through your life. It's like, oh, you know, this is where I'm drawn. I'm drawn to more of this kind of collaborative thing, and I'm drawn to, and sometimes, I mean, I'll only speak for myself then. I've had those feelings, and then you think like, am I like the only person in the world who has these, you know, what I'm drawn to? And then when you start to have conversations, you go, oh my gosh, everybody to some extent or another is feeling it, seeing it, wanting it, being it. So yeah, I love that this conversation was had. Thank you.
So for many of us, we are the teachers. Our role is to be the teacher. And so when we are approached with maybe more seemingly old patterns, we can be the teachers and the speakers outward. And as I mentioned, just by us being on the planet and the light coming in and it being a feminine energy, everyone is on the pathway to shift, just in varying degrees. And sometimes if we understand that also, it helps us be a little bit more understanding. Okay. So we talked about current evidence. I don't know if we missed any on that. We wanted to spend some time talking about points of light to remember. And we actually have some cards that we can hand out that, yeah, I think if we pass them out now, that would be great. But we talked through many of these as we talked this morning. So exercise the power of a pause. So when we hear things, to pause and reflect before we have a knee-jerk reaction or before we jump to a conclusion, the power of the pause. And it's okay to tell people you're talking to, hey, wait a minute, I just need a moment to think about this. Sometimes we think that we have to react and we have to fill in that void space, right? Space or quietness is uncomfortable for us. So the power of the pause is actually very powerful for us.
I can choose where I lend my energy. I think that kind of goes right along with the power of the pause. You know, you can have that moment where you feel like it's going to go south, and there's some habitual energy that starts to run, because we all kind of have habit trails in our brain. It's like, this is how it's done, this is how I respond when somebody responds to me like that. And so if you take that pause and then you have the choice. Isn't that great? There is a place in your life where you have choice, and you can choose. It's like, oh, no, you know what? I'm not going to allow that energy to flow out of me and to create something new and negative. So the choice, I love that.
The filtering what you allow in your field is really important, just because, you know, our energy is always interfacing, and because of the ideas of quantum physics is there's wave entanglement, is that we're constantly passing energy and entangling with other people's energies. So what I love is, and I was talking with Pete earlier this morning about it, is you know, to say in my head, as I can just observe it, I don't have to engage in it and pull my energy back, as I can go, isn't that interesting? That's like the best line. Yeah. It's just like, isn't that interesting? You know, because that takes you out of having to judge or talk about it or react to it. You're just observing it, and then you're holding your own energy. You know, another one I like to do a lot of times is I'll just be like, not in my field, you don't. You know, is that if there's stuff that's getting kicked up that doesn't feel like it's you know, really going to be helpful to people or myself, is I'll just like, not in my field, you don't. And if I can't use my hands, if I'm in a meeting and I would be going, not in my field, you don't, then I just ask my little energetic arms to do it for me. Because we're multidimensional. You know, we aren't even just what we see. So then I'll ask that my energetic arms just clear that out of my field.
I can look beyond what is being presented. There are so many examples of this, but I think I will go with, you know what, I chose a career where I got to be in front of people an awful lot, and that meant that there was a lot of judgment coming at me. The one that I continue to struggle with, and that I am being very brave today about, is the way women are expected to look and be in this culture. You can look at any women's magazine and see things, you know, like the world's best bikini body, or things like that. And you know what? That if you look at information that's telling you how to be perfect physically, now look beyond that. What's happening with that? Like today, I'm being very courageous because I am going sleeveless. Does anybody else see that as courageous? I am courageous. Thank you. And I'm not, you know, it kind of moves a little bit when I claim my strength. But I say it's courageous. When I was 42, I was told, don't ever let your arms show on television again. You know, that kind of thinking, if you look at that, you go, okay, I really need to work hard. There's some way that I can make myself perfect and acceptable to the world. But what you're seeing is a way to disconnect you from your body and your beauty and your imperfect perfection. So there were many ways to look beyond, but that's just one way that has struck me pretty dramatically. It's a very powerful tool of the distorted masculine to keep the feminine from owning her complete power. I have the right to bear arms.
Awesome. So the next one is, I'm a light bulb. How many of you recognize yourself as your light? And one of my gifts is I can see light. And so I love sitting up here and seeing all your light, and I've been watching the shift in the light in the room. And what I ask you today is to shine that light outward. Acknowledge it, that you all have a light. So if you think about looking at us from the universe, we all, from up out in the galaxy, we all have a bright light. So shine it bright. Yes?
You mentioned, though, that we're supposed to hold on to the light for a while, and you can explain more.
Yeah. So, yes, absolutely. So the question was, we talked earlier about holding on to the light. So as this new light comes in, and we had a burst of energy come in with the full moon on July 31st. And so often, part of the masculine energy is when I learn something or I feel something, I have to do something with it right away. And the feminine energy is pull it in, hold it, understand it for you first. And then you can start to share that. It's kind of like pregnancy. It's, yeah. It's you hold it, develop it, understand it before you just give it away. Okay? Absolutely. And many of us were raised or taught to always give to others first, right? So it's a very different way of thinking at, okay, I have to hold this energy first and then give out. I can still give out, but I get to hold it with me first. Okay?
The last, or the second to last one, there is, change is how do you, just like I spoke earlier about the person who couldn't see the time change, is all of us have that stuff, And one way to get looser, living a little bit outside our box is to do things that change things up a little bit. And do it in ways like driving home a different way, eating a little something different, eating at a different time of day, taking a break to call somebody you really want to talk to instead of the other energy is like, no, I have to work first, and then if I have any time, then I'll do this or that, That's part of the older energy. So it's more like, no, doing those things in different times now will help kind of break that form in which you think your life has to go. And we're all doing that. And other ways that it was so interesting too is I was walking the other day and there was, we had National Night Out and there were people around late and I was talking with them and one of them said that he was a stay-at-home dad. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. Is in my mind, it's that part of that embracing the times changing and really. And I said, what? And this other guy said next to me, he said, well, you must have got laid off. And I was just like, and the guy so bravely stood there and he said, no, it was my choice. And I was just like, oh my goodness, it's that part of just doing something a little differently. But even when you're, you could see the innocence of that other guy, that his idea was that the only way a man would want to be taking care of their child would be as if they got laid off. So it's like, seeing that, and then now this man just in his alignment said, no, it was my choice. Then now the other guy has something new to experience, huh? And that's how change happens. So it's doing those things a little differently